Good evening and welcome to Black and Azul. Thank you so much for waiting for our 7:10 p.m. kickoff instead of our 7 p.m. kickoff. My name is Charles Wollin. Along with the team, we have the full team in the building, and we are absolutely delighted. We're going to talk to you tonight about the Quakes beating Real Salt Lake. We have an interview with Tommy Thompson, and then we'll get you set for the quarterfinal with Minnesota United on Saturday. Let me introduce the rest of the team. Alex Morgan coming to you. He is the editor-in-chief of the Quakes Talk website. You can find him Quakes_talk on Twitter and Quakes Talk online as well. Jamon Moore, he is the chief editor of Quakes Epicenter, J Moore Quakes. You can find him on Twitter under his handle right there. And then back with us, and we are very delighted, is Joel Soria. Hello to you. It is really fantastic to see you. First and foremost, Joel, how are you doing?
Thank you for having me, Charles. Obviously, always a pleasure to be with you guys, be with the team. No better feeling. I'm doing better. Maybe you guys know, maybe you guys don't know, but I was involved in a mountain biking accident over the weekend. Still recuperating, feeling a lot better though. Luckily, I was wearing a helmet. Feeling really, really good to be back after a small vacation, and then as the vacation was coming to an end, you know, the accident happened, but hey, things happen for a reason. I'm feeling much better, and perfect timing, I guess, with the game on Saturday.
Julia Leal, a big fan of yours, says, welcome back, Joel. Marcelo Barriga says, shout out to Joel. Hope you're doing a lot better. It was awesome getting to meet you at the Black Lives Matter protest at City Hall. Joel is a legend. And I agree. We started this thing a long time ago, about a year and a half ago, with this entire team, and it's so wonderful to have you back on the show. Ted Firestone says, good to have Joel back as well. And let's get into the analysis and break this down, lads. The Quakes defeating RSL 5-2. Lots of faces on the score sheet. Wando, Magnus Eriksson with 2 penalties, Christian Espinosa with another goal, and then Vaca with a wonderful effort that really kind of put this match away. But Jamon, I'll go ahead and start with you on your initial thoughts and analysis of this game and how you thought that it went for the Quakes.
I mean, it was what we've come to know about Matias Almeida's brand of soccer, right? It was very much the Quakes with their foot on the gas for 90 plus minutes, and they're going to make a mistake, and sure enough they did, and gave up a goal from a mistake. But you know, it's the brand that I think fans really kind of resonates with them, because you know, sometimes they're fantastically good and at times they can be fantastically bad, but in the end product, the soccer is a lot of fun, and the result itself was fantastic this time around. But for the second game in a row, I think they really fully dictated the terms of the match, and you know, that bodes well for their confidence coming into Minnesota for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree, Jamon. It was a great victory, and what was so surprising to me was just how comfortable it looked. The Quakes were really able to control the game really well, and I think that was due to their strength, but also because it was a little bit of a tactical mismatch. RSL pressed pretty high up the field, which caught me off guard, given that they're usually a pretty conservative team. We'd been almost certain that they would sit with a low defensive block to try to frustrate San Jose's forwards. And I think that their pressure, the fact that they stepped up higher than we were expecting, also caught the Quakes off guard a little bit in the first 5 minutes. And RSL created a couple of half chances by forcing turnovers and transitioning quickly. But it really just wasn't sustainable. As their forwards got tired, the Quakes got more comfortable. They grew into the game. They were able to work the ball to the midfielders, who then had all the space in the world to play these gorgeous passing combinations and pick out Espinosa on the wing. And it was super weird, because one of the big questions we had asked was, how were the Quakes going to be able to draw RSL out to create that kind of space in behind? But RSL basically did that to themselves, and the Quakes exploited it really well.
Joel, what you make?
Well, I think that this was it was definitely one of the better offensive showings under the Almeida era. The Quakes did have some, and I'll talk about this later as well, but they did have a lot of defensive mishaps. Now, it turns out that, the offense was really able to pick up the flaws that the Earthquakes were showing on the field. And not only were they able to pick the team back up, but they were really able to propel them to a level that we have really not seen from Matias Almeida Quakes. And that obviously is a really, really good sign ahead of Saturday's match against an opponent that they haven't been able to beat in the last 3 occasions and have been actually outscored 11-3 goals in those last 3 matches. This fine form couldn't come at a better time for the Quakes, and honestly, it makes it even that much more intriguing heading into the weekend.
Yeah, when it came to RSL, I felt that the Quakes may have ran into a potential bogey team that could have been a thorn in their side based on last year's results against RSL, losing at RSL and then winning in the final minutes at home. But what you saw, I think, were the strengths and weaknesses all in one game of this team. An amazing offensive output, Vaco with a phenomenal individual effort, Cristian Espinosa being able to open the scoring and give the Quakes some calm, give them some balance. And while RSL was able to get 2 goals and make it 3-2 at one point, I never felt that the game was really ever in doubt, to be fair, based on the midfield strength and just the confidence that you saw. And we'll hear from Tommy Thompson. We did ask him about winning that penalty early in the second half, but I never really thought it was ever in doubt. With this game, it was just kind of the energy that they expanded and the confidence. And I think that comes from the coaching staff and from Matias Almeida's way of going about it. And that's a beautiful thing that Quakes fans have been waiting for and they're seeing now. Let's go ahead and pull up the XG and quickly walk through this, Jamon, on the expected goals.
Yeah, very quickly. So, I think, Charles, as you just said, this game was never really in doubt. The Quakes dominated the expected goals. Now, keep in mind with the 3.68 expected goals, each of the penalties are a 0.75. So 1.5 of the expected goals come from penalties, but that's still very dominant on the offensive side. The Quakes with a really good chance to score 3 or 4 goals in this game based upon the expected goals, and they got 5. Whereas RSL, maybe we're lucky to even get 2 out of it. Honestly, the second goal, Damir Krylak, I didn't have a lot of problems with it. I thought most people did the right thing defensively. Judson was shoulder to shoulder with him, got there, as quickly as he could. Really good finish by Krylak in that situation for the most part. Not too much at fault for the Quakes. But that's really all RSL showed on their own on the night, was that one big opportunity, and they made the most of it in that situation, but nowhere close to enough.
Yeah, and Jamon, what stands out here to me is the 3.68 expected goals to me. And that was entirely because Magnus Eriksson, Vaco, and Andy Rios all had probably their best performances in a Quake shirt in this match. Let's starting with Rios. He looked a little lost in the number 9 role in the group stages. He wasn't able to create space for himself, so he was always receiving balls at weird angles under a lot of pressure. But what he started doing this game that I noticed was checking to the ball much more aggressively. He would drop really deep to get the ball, and his hold-up play was absolutely incredible. He was able to get low, shield the ball, and made excellent use of his chest to take balls down and lay them off to other midfielders. And this also had knock-on effects because Rios was dropping so deep. That dragged RSL's defenders out of position and gave Espinosa more room into which to run. I think it gave Eriksson a little bit more license to roam. He appeared in a lot of wide spaces, and that gave him some more time to pick his head up and also get some better angles to play those progressive passes that Jamon always talks about. And Eriksson, he's played well all tournament, but usually his role is more facilitatory, moving the ball through the middle, closing down quickly when the Quakes lose possession. On this occasion, he was front and center. In addition to losing those 2 penalty goals, He was spraying these gorgeous diagonal balls all over the field and threading these incisive through balls in between the defenders. I think his pass to Tommy Thompson right before the penalty was a perfect example. It was just sublime. It reminded me of something Andrea Pirlo would do. And I think on the basis of this performance, his transfer value could increase by a couple $100,000. Honestly, if I were Jesse Fiorinelli, this game might make me seriously consider offering him a contract extension for another year or two because of just how integral he made himself to their offense this game.
I like where you were going with that, Alex. I would question it a little bit, though. I wouldn't go as far as to say that Vako or even Eriksson had their best game in a Quake shirt, but I would say as a offensive unit collectively, they did have their best game. I mean, you're talking about Vako, contributing and also putting the ball in the back of the net, thinking twice before moving forward in the final third, looking for options. You have Magnus Eriksson, like you said, having the to distribute freely with little to no pressure, and having an Andy Rios who was hungry for goal as well, who was willing to contribute, willing to put his body on the line. I don't think we've ever questioned that. That is what Andy Rios does, right? He's a target striker. At least that's the role that he's been playing in the last couple of games. And then Cristian Espinosa, who we've always known has tremendous quality. I think talent-wise, he's the most talented player in this Quakes team. I don't think many of us can argue that. But now you see a Cristian Espinosa that has the liberty and has the will to move forward, to look and attack at goal in much better situations. I think last year and earlier this season, yes, he was taking shot at goals, but potentially those shots, weren't as efficient. He's been taking this tournament, and I think all of that has to do with the fact that the team is moving much better. Players are really picking up now on, where the ball goes and where they should go. I think there's just a lot more chemistry. There's a lot more understanding off the ball specifically, and that obviously is definitely a force to reckon with. 5 goals against RSL. RSL happens to be one of the more defensively solid teams in the West. To score 5 goals in a round of 16 match that could have gone either way, because really before that even started, it was a flip coin. I think the odds were 50 to 50, 50, 51-49. The Quakes really not only picked up, on their errors, but they made a statement that, they're one of the most dangerous teams in the league when it comes to offense.
I absolutely agree, Joel. And you were breaking in and out a little bit there, but I think I was able to get most of what you were saying. And just in regards to Vako, I think he looked really good, but I agree with you in that I watched the game twice. The first time through live, I was really impressed with this game. And as you said, the defensive work rate especially. But on the second viewing, it looked a little bit less impressive than the first. I noticed a lot more of his usual errors. He had a couple of superfluous dribbles early on. But then the moment when it changed was when he played that simple pass to Espinosa for San Jose's opening goal. It was like a light bulb went off in his head. He's like, oh, I can create chances by passing the ball. And he looked like a completely different player for the rest of the night. He facilitated by making the early pass, the simple pass. And I think he actually had 100% completion rate on his 27 passes, which was super impressive. So if he continues this upward trend, then I don't think we can complain.
Couple members of the audience I want to bring in here. Jesus Solorio, who's typically our MVP of comments, or maybe should be the mayor of comments. Great game by the team. And then Joel Velez had wrote, Kasia seemed out of it, not what we've seen of him. Of course, Kasia missing his kick on that first breakaway goal, and then also pulled out of position, having to run, probably about 20, maybe 15 yards in front of him to close down for that pass for that second goal. In this system, I do think that they, again, do get exposed a little bit if they're not completely organized, but that stuff is going to happen. And we've seen this team concede goals because of some disorganization and discombobulation before. I still think he's definitely one of Matias Almeida's first names on the team sheet. But I know a lot of folks want Flo to be partnered with Osvaldo Alanis as well. Akash Saxena writes, the passing was top notch, really the best I've seen since Matias has joined the team. I think that's a really good comment there. Jesus again agreed with his hold-up play is really good, referring to Andy Rios. Emmanuel says, rewatch the highlights and credit to Vaco to come back and win on the ball on the defensive side. He recovered the ball and made the play for the first goal. Yes, agree. And then his own individual effort, I thought was wonderful. Nathan Zaragoza, I love this comment, by the way. Agreed. Vaco was actually hustling hard during that game. Good for him. Joel Velez, if we can only get Vaco to pass the ball around, he'd be fire emoji. And Nathan, I'll come back to you as well. So exposed some of the strengths, the many strengths of this offensive front four of the Quakes, if you will, all being influential, and then defensively, had a little bit of some lapses here and there. But anyway, without further ado, we had the chance to speak with Tommy Thompson earlier today. Jamon and I had the chance to sit down with him. He was in between training sessions. I also, before we want to play this interview, just want to acknowledge that Alex Morgan booked this interview for our show and was unable to attend, but we really wanted to have him there. And he created all the questions that we asked Tommy. And so just wanted to give Alex and I know that this show is becoming a lot of pat on the back for certain people, but this is the first time that all four of us are together in a few months. So I'm going to do it. And I appreciate everybody on this team very much. So here we go. Tommy Thompson recorded earlier today. All right, Tommy, thanks so much again for joining us. Between winning matches, 4-3, 5-2, winning penalties, converting them, RC racing down the hallway in the hotel, jumping up and down in the dressing room, celebrating after every game. Is it the yellow shorts?
Yeah, it's a question that needs to be asked. I have noticed that ever since we started wearing that uniform, good things have transpired. But no, I think it has a lot more to do with where this group is at mentally and physically, and I'm just excited to be a part of it.
In all seriousness, though, like it seems like you guys are really getting better every game. Does it feel the same way to you and the group?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that we were ready for. We were the first team in Orlando, so we want to make sure that we got acclimated to the heat. We got acclimated to the setup around the hotel, and the idea was to be the first ones here, but the last ones to leave. And so I think it's just the amount of time that we've spent here has given us time to get comfortable and really feel at home whenever we need to line up against whoever we end up playing.
But I think along with the yellow shorts, the other thing that people have been noticing is that for some reason, at least on television, it looks like Chris Wondolowski's shirt is 2 sizes too big. But yet he keeps going out and scoring goals, and we're worried that the wind resistance is a factor here. Can you comment? Have you guys talked about this at all? Has anyone else pointed out that Wando's shirt looks a little bigger than normally he wears it?
No, I actually haven't noticed that at all. But whatever he's doing right now, he's doing it really well. So I'm just hoping he he keeps doing whatever it is that he's doing.
Well, we know that these games against Minnesota United, since Matias Almeyda, came to the team, have been one-sided the other direction, Tommy. So with that kind of in mind, like, what is it that they do that makes it so difficult when you play against them to be able to scheme for them? Because it seems like if there's a team that maybe understands how to play against you guys, it might be Minnesota United.
Yeah, I think Minnesota's a great team. They've had a lot of success in this league over the past couple of years, and Adrian Heath's done a great job with them. But that being said, we're not afraid of anybody. Whether we're lining up against Seattle, Chicago, Salt Lake, we're ready to go. And our main focus is always on our game. So we're going to treat this game just like any other. Obviously, naturally, there's going to be a lot more excitement, a lot more anticipation, but we're ready to go.
In the last match, just right after halftime, there was that switch of the field, and then you got on the ball, continued your run, got into the area, won that penalty, and then were able to take advantage and go up 2-1 after the penalty. What was said at halftime then and there, and after you had won that penalty, you had such a look of concentration and poise, and you seemed to be so focused after that. How key is it for you and for Nick to get up and down those flanks in this system? And it seems like you guys have been really flourishing quite a bit in this tournament, both of you guys.
Yeah. Matias has done a great job of creating a team culture that's positive and it's encouraging. So it's allowed us to get through some really difficult times. And what I love about what he has to say is that he's so consistent with his message. In moments where we're winning, in moments where the games are tied, in moments where we're losing, he continues to preach the same principles. And at halftime of that Salt Lake game, he just continued to encourage us to do what we've been doing all tournament, to be patient and just focus on playing our game. So we went out in that second half confident and ready to go, and I think it showed. So it felt great to contribute in that way by earning that penalty. It was a great ball from Magnus, and I was happy to see him put away the PK as well. And it just shows where this team is at right now. Everyone wants to bring their grain of sand. Everyone wants to contribute in any way that they can. And it's allowed us to be in the position that we are today.
If there might be kind of one weakness that seems that, people who watch the game on TV or comment on the game on TV that people have said about Matias's system, it's that when you get the right kind of ball-carrying center back, sometimes that person can be unmarked and be able to move through the center of the pitch to do things. We saw a little bit of that with the second goal against RSL, and Minnesota United has had some success with that as well. I think Michael Boxall last year a bit, Iko Para a bit. Now, they don't have Iko Para for the upcoming game. Is this something that you guys talk about, like what we need to do in these situations? Or is it something like, hey, you know what, more power to them. If they can find a way to exploit us, that's on them. We got to worry about what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Matias and his coaching staff do a really good job of analyzing every aspect of our game and the dangers that other teams can bring to the game for us as well. So they identify all types of threats, and he addresses them really well. And so I can promise you that he's thinking about all the different ways that Minnesota can hurt us, but he's also thinking about all the ways that we can hurt them. And like I said earlier, we're not afraid of anybody. And regardless of what's happened in the past, the mentality of this team is that we're going to approach every game the same way. And we're going to do everything we can to put teams on the back foot and to dominate. And there's a lot of belief in this group right now. It's a really confident locker room. And we're happy to be here in Florida, so we'll be ready to go against Minnesota on Saturday.
A couple of matches went to penalties this last round. Can you just touch on if how you guys have been practicing those and if you're ready to step up and take one if it comes down to it?
Yeah, so we've been working on PKs during practice. I think it's something that's important at this stage of the tournament. Obviously, there's no extra time to go straight into PK, so I think everyone's trying to prepare themselves as best as they can. So we'll see what happens. Our mentality is that we'll win it before the PK shootout, so that's what we're shooting for, but we'll also be ready for anything that might happen.
Do we have to go back to academy days to remember the last time that you took a penalty, or has there been a situation since then that you've had to take one in a game?
I've taken a couple PKs as a pro, but it's been a while. It's been a while. But, we'll see. We'll see what happens on Saturday.
What would you say one of your favorite stories of Matias Almeida is, and if it's been on this trip or if it was when he first kind of started taking over this team at the end of 2018, and do you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, I got a ton of stories about Matias, and I think the best one's still being written. I think the story of our team is incredible. The fact that he came in 2018 when we were last in the league, we had only won 4 games, and in the first meeting he sat us down and he said this group can win. We're going to change the culture, we're going to change the mentality, we're going to change the system, and you're going to be a team that no one wants to play against. And to reflect on that, I think it's incredible to see a coach come in and say that with that much confidence. And he was saying that with the same group of players he was going to do it, and to see him actually do it over the course of the past year and a half is incredible. And it's a testament to his leadership. It's a testament of his soccer knowledge and just what he can do to an organization. But if I had to pick out a specific story, probably my favorite one, I've told this on my Instagram before, but my Spanish speaking journey was really intense in that initial Cancun preseason trip in 2019, and I didn't tell the coaching staff about my Spanish early on. I wasn't hooting and hollering that I was going to do my best to learn Spanish. I wasn't saying like that I was studying for 2 to 3 hours every day. I just wanted one day to be able to speak it and surprise everybody with it. And so throughout the 17 or so days that we were in Cancun, I was really studying a lot. And an opportunity presented itself actually once we returned to the United States, and we were in LA playing against LAFC in preseason. And the night before that game, he asked me something to the effect of like, oh, like why did you come back to the meal room? Because we had been eating as a team. I had left and I had just came back, and he asked it in front of everybody. And I told them in Spanish, like, oh, me olvidé mi llave, which is like, oh, I forgot my key. And then he said, oh, wow, your Spanish is good. When did you learn? And I told him, oh, like, aprendí in Cancun, which is like I learned in Cancun. And then he's like, oh, when'd you go to Cancun? Because he was thinking about oh, that's him right there, actually. But he was saying, oh, when did you go to Cancun? Like he was thinking I studied there or something, or I'd been there a couple of years ago. And I told him, oh, like I went last week. So I was like, oh, la semana pasada con el equipo. And he couldn't believe it. And he's like, well, you've learned this much Spanish already. And it was a really special moment where all that hard work I put into learning Spanish paid off, and to see like his eyes light up, to see the other coaches on his staff eyes light up, it was cool. And I just wanted to send a message of just to my teammates, to the coaches, that we can all do more to try to understand each other. We can all do more to learn each other's languages, and so far so good.
Do you feel that other players at all, either on the team or within MLS, that specifically know that you have learned Spanish and that you want to be able to do a better job communicating with everybody? Do you feel that it's been inspiring to the rest of Major League Soccer, and that people should be learning other languages?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had a number of players contact me about Duolingo, and once they saw me actually have like a full 1 hour long Instagram live with Matias, I think that was when people really started to see that, wow, he is conversational. Like he can hold his own in like a Spanish interview. And it's been really rewarding for me to see like that vision I had at the beginning of last year to play out. I know Robert Jonas has been learning Spanish as well, and he's got, hundreds of days in a row on Duolingo where he's really trying to put his best foot forward in learning Spanish. And it's good to see. It's good to see. That's exactly what I wanted to do. I wish I would have done it earlier, but, it's never too late. So I'm doing my best to encourage as many players as I can, encourage as many people as I can, and just continue to spread this message of people taking an extra second to try to understand why someone might be saying what is being said. And I think it's a message that needs to be heard right now.
Was there a moment in time, though, where your teammates knew you knew Spanish, but the opposition didn't know you knew Spanish, and you were able to pick up something that they said on the pitch and kind of spy a little bit until they figured out that you actually knew it?
Yeah, not quite so far, because the Spanish I've learned, it's all been through Duolingo basically, and then just picking things up with my teammates and maybe some TV shows. But the slang and the speed at which slang is communicated on and off the field is still something I'm really working on. So we'll see. I'm just now starting to get more and more comfortable to where I can pick up on some of those quick interactions. So we'll see. Hopefully I can surprise a team or two with some Spanish.
How does that work a little bit with a backline communication, though? Because we know how important communication can be between the keeper and the defenders and such. And you have Judson, who's Portuguese, and you have a couple people that speak more Spanish, a couple people that speak English. Vega speaks mostly Spanish, but he's pretty good with two languages. When you guys are communicating, how is that normally working with the different languages there?
Yeah, so Judson is comfortable in Spanish. Portuguese and Spanish are very similar, so he's been able to pick up on a lot of Spanish very quickly. So I speak to Judson in Spanish. I speak to Christian Espinoza in Spanish, but Christian's been studying a lot of English as well, so he speaks to me in English usually. And then me and Vega go back and forth. Vega speaks good English, but we speak in Spanish sometimes as well. So it's pretty fluid. It depends on the situation, and if I feel comfortable enough to answer something in Spanish quickly, and I know they'll be able to understand, I usually choose to speak Spanish just to make sure I'm still practicing and improving my accent, because it definitely needs some work. But yeah, it's fluid, and I think that's what we want it to. That's how we want it to be. We don't want people to think that anyone's talking badly about them in English or in Spanish or in Portuguese or in Georgian. We want everyone to have enough trust in each other that what is being said, even if you might not understand the language, what is being said is only being said to support one another, to communicate something positive. So that's our goal for our team, and it's exactly what's transpired so far.
Tommy, with everything that's going on with COVID and with you guys being there, and we've heard Matias in his weekly press conferences reflect on everything that's going on in the world, and everyone, specifically you guys being away from families and such, and then also the tie towards being, at Disney with Mickey and Minnie and kind of those spiritual characters, if you will. How much reflection have you been able to do with obviously sport being somewhat of a privilege to our society, but also you guys providing so much fun and joy to community and being able to kind of beam that back towards the Bay Area?
Yeah, I think it was a message that Matias communicated to us ever since we found out that we were going to be playing in this tournament. And I think it's a special message that he's now communicated to the world. And it's an amazing opportunity for us to be here at Disney and to share that happiness and that joy that normally the Disney characters would bring. But unfortunately, they're in quarantine with everyone else. So it's now our responsibility, and it's our opportunity as well to share that type of happiness with the people of San Jose and with the soccer lovers across the world. And it's the mentality that I'm grateful to have, and I'm grateful to have a leader to communicate that type of mentality to a group, because not every team in Major League Soccer's adopted that type of mindset, but we have, and I think it showed in our performances. It showed in our interactions with the fans on social media, our interactions with each other on and off the field, and that's what we want to do. It's a difficult time right now. There's all kinds of problems just everywhere, it seems like, and there's no doubt that it's tough, but if we can share a little bit of joy by scoring a goal or by winning a game, I mean, it's something that we want to do, and so far so good.
Well, Tommy, thank you so much for your time today and your candor on some of these things, and best of luck against Minnesota United in the quarterfinals, and congratulations on the success so far in the tournament.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us, Tommy. Take care. So there you have it. Tommy Thompson chatting with us earlier this afternoon. What I really appreciated was actually the ending portion of it, where he was talking about how grateful he is, and that the rest of the team has the same mentality, and that not all teams had that mentality. And Jamon, you and I discussed that after, and to be honest, I've had a tough time with sports being back. I want sports to be back. It's part of my livelihood and my occupation, but also I had some mixed feelings about it. And the way that this tournament has gone, and obviously with what the Quakes have done, it's been very uplifting and positive. But it's also important to remember what's going on. 150,000 people that have lost their lives due to COVID. And, I wanted to see if we could kind of be able to ask him about some sort of reflection and how that comes from the manager. And I thought his response to that was really quite poignant and beautiful in a way. And then also his connection to his other teammates through learning Spanish. I just think that is a wonderful thing. I think all players should learn a second language. It should be mandatory, and either French, Spanish, German, whatever, Portuguese, and continue to connect, because again, this is a global sport, and we're all in this together, and so that for me kind of put it back to, okay, we're a world sport. So I had a lot of thoughts and feelings about that interview, and I know you thought similarly in many ways.
Yeah, Tommy, I think, shows a high level of maturity for his age and the number of years that he's been in the league, because he did come in at this early age, and he's clearly a leader in this squad. I mean, we saw that last season when he made that speech on television. You saw the leadership potential there. I think someone mentioned in the chat that he's probably a future captain. I agree. I think all that is there. And not only that, it's not just with Tommy, but it's with these other young players. And Matias Almeyda has made this a family. He's made this into something where the players really are bought in to what he's trying to do. It's people first, it's team first, it's family first, and soccer second. And that really is paying dividends. You can see in players like Tommy Thompson.
Want to throw it to you guys. Alex, again, thank you so much for setting this up. You should have been doing this interview, but you will next time. And what did you make of that?
Yeah, what struck me about that interview is just how comfortable and confident that Tommy looked. And I think that just goes to show how strong the Quakes are right now, and how much they're looking forward to the challenge this weekend. And also how much, Tommy has thrived in this last year and a half under Matias Almeyda. Before Matias arrived, there were still questions about his future in this Quakes team, about where he fit in, about whether he would ever be able to fulfill the potential that he had when he joined the team as a young homegrown player in his teenage years. But I think he's been able to do that now. I think we can pretty confidently say that he's met the expectations of being a leader on the field and a starter in this team and a contributor in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you all. I agree with you all completely. Tommy has, really, really benefited from the arrival of Matias Almeyda. obviously he's worked for it really hard. He has transitioned to a new position, being a natural midfielder, right midfielder, and then also somewhat of a striker or second striker, and then have or a number 10, whatever it, and then having to transition to this position, this brand new position. It's not an easy task. It's not an easy task, and he's done it well. I think he's locked down the right back position. I think we can all agree with that. He's a team player. He doesn't complain. He works hard. He's not the fastest player on the field, but he gives it his all. He earned the Quakes a valuable penalty that really set the tone last game. And outside of what he does on the field, I'm also really I'm honestly in awe of what he does off the field. I think it's really, really exemplary, especially for his age. To be in the community, he usually tends to be the face of the Quakes within the community, going to different elementary schools, training, kids that are interested in becoming professional soccer players like him. And then obviously off the field, also willing to learn a second language in order to bond and connect with some of his teammates and the coaching staff. I mean, that is really, that to me, that's what professionalism is. And, Tommy's doing it, and he's setting the example for everyone. So, kudos to him. He's doing it really well.
Yeah, that was a really fun interview, and we look forward to a lot more of these interviews, one-on-ones with players as we get them, and we work with the Quakes PR department. Thank you to Tommy and to Jake Pisani, and again Alex Morgan for setting this interview up. All right, so let's go ahead and preview Minnesota United, the quarterfinal, coming up on Saturday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern. It'll be on ESPN2, ESPN Deportes, and my friend Carlos Cesar Rivera, 1370 KZSF. And then, of course, on KNBR 1050 with Ted Ramey as well, your Quakes broadcasters. But let's go ahead and pull up the overall bracket of MLS is back. And as you can see, the Quakes are down there, the bottom right. Not on the bottom of the table, but just bottom right there against Minnesota. They would, if they were to win the match, they would take on the winner of Orlando and LAFC. Meanwhile, on the other side of the bracket, Philadelphia and Sporting, and I believe there was a result in that match already. You guys will have to fill me in. And then that winner takes on NYCFC versus Portland as well. So let's go ahead and pull up a quote from Matias Almeida as well earlier today from his press conference. And he was talking about on not conceding goals and how it would be a little bit different. He says the key would be not to concede goals. I think it will be a hard game like they are all for us. I think we'll have to take a lot of necessary precautions to prevent a lot of things in their favor, and we'll have to play our game. But we know we are up against an opponent who has beaten us several times. He has gone up against Adrian Heath and Minnesota United 3 times, and he has lost all 3 of them, including the matchup earlier this year. But before that, the Quakes had Minnesota's number, winning all 4 matches, and especially that 2017 match at home to put them into the playoffs, that 3-2 thriller in extra time. But let's go ahead and preview and break this down. Joel, I'll start with you because you asked Matias Almeida that question. And what was his thoughts and views? And it seems like it's going to be, quite a battle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in knowing, and I want to know what Matias and how Matias is going to approach this game on Saturday. He didn't really reveal many of his cards, as he usually doesn't at a press conference prior to an important match. Adrian Heath and Minnesota United have done a terrific job against the San Jose Earthquakes under Matias Almeida. They've been really able to absorb defensively the Quakes, penchant in the attack and really hitting them back with a vicious counterattack. The latest obviously was just a couple of months ago when, Minnesota United scored 5 goals against the Quakes at Avaya Stadium. It was then that I really thought that this season wasn't going to be a season to remember for the San Jose Earthquakes, or that it would be very similar to what it was last season. But obviously the Quakes have shown us the opposite of that. They are definitely the story, I would say, of the tournament. They're certainly the dark horse of the tournament. And they're going to be the favorite heading into Saturday. I expect Adrian Heath to go into this game, filled with confidence, knowing that he has 3 games in the bag against Matias Almeida, knowing that this San Jose Earthquakes team that he's going to be facing doesn't look much different to what it looked like a couple of months ago. And knowing that, the pressure's on the Quakes. And that's what worries me the most is, are the Quakes really going to be able to go into this game knowing that they have the upper hand per se? And we did ask Matias about that. We did ask some of the players whether or not that would factor in. They said that it wouldn't. They said that they're still going to be going. Nick Lima, I think, was the player who gave the best response to that, saying somewhere along the lines that, it's the never say die mentality. The Quakes always play with a chip on their shoulders. They're the blue collar team. That is the ethos of the black and blue. I get that. But look, when you're going into tournaments like these, short tournaments, and this specifically into do or die situations like Saturday's match, I think being the favorite and being the underdog really matters. That's not to say that that's going to be the determining factor, but heading into the match, I see Minnesota being the team that has the upper hand in terms of the state of mind and probably also the tactical side of things.
Absolutely, Joel. And I think this is going to be one of the most hotly anticipated matches of the round of the quarterfinals because of these themes that you were talking about. And it's a bit of a weird dynamic, as you say, where both teams are sort of trying to position themselves as the underdog. Now, recent history would suggest that Minnesota United are going to be favorites because they so convincingly defeated San Jose earlier this year, 5-2, and then they put 3 goals past them on 2 occasions last year. The Quakes have done well in this tournament. I think the Quakes have performed more convincingly in this tournament, but Adrian Heath has just had Matias Almeida's number. And what made Minnesota so successful against the Quakes is that they were willing to let their center backs dribble with the ball. The Quakes man mark everywhere across the field except the opposition center back. So when opposing teams can let their center backs venture forward and dribble with the ball, and the center backs are comfortable doing that, taking the ball into midfield, and Minnesota United have 2 center backs who are very comfortable doing that, Iko Para, Boxall, and more. That throws San Jose's man marking system out of whack. We mentioned it earlier in the show. That's exactly what RSL did for their second goal. Silva dribbled right through the midfield with the ball. That forced Kasia to step out of position and created the space into which Krylak could get the ball and score. And look, against the last time they played Minnesota, it was Iko Para who was doing most of that dribbling. But he's obviously not in Orlando with Minnesota. So I think that's a disadvantage for Minnesota. But I have no doubt that Heath will be having Opara's replacements doing the exact same thing, and that will still pose problems for the Quakes.
Yeah, I don't disagree with it, but I am going to take exception with one thing. It is a different team, and I'm going to point out why. It's Judson, right? Judson was not there against Minnesota United before. You had other players playing out of position. You had Magnus too deep. You had Jackson Yule trying to play the 6. You had Hussein out wide. You had Bako in the middle. That's not what we've seen in this tournament. They're back to the configuration that's worked pretty well for them. Now, obviously, never against Minnesota United, but I do think that Iko Para factor is going to be a big one. Their ability to be able to spread the Quakes out and use the center back in the center of the pitch is definitely impacted without Iko Para. Minnesota United has not been dominant in this tournament. They've gotten through, but they've not dominant. And, Heath loves to play this underdog card. For whatever reason, Vegas even has them as dogs in this game, even though the Quakes haven't won in 3 games against them, which is kind of confounding. So I'm sure he's still playing the underdog card because that's what he does. And he's going to have his team ready, but I don't think it's the same team, and I don't think it's going to be the same game. The guy you need to watch out for, of course, is in the middle. It's going to be a good, I think, battle between some of the central midfielders. But if Vako plays the type of game that he played in the last game, and Espinoza does as well as he has been, we know that the Quakes are successful when they play well through their wings. It's summertime, guys. It's time for Vako. He should be showing up any day now. This might be his time, and if he does, I think that the Quakes are going to have a weapon that they didn't really get to show against Minnesota United the first time, and they're going to have the defensive weapon. Hopefully that'll shut them down on some of these situations. And remember, most of those goals came off of set pieces. They have not, I don't believe, given up a goal in a set piece in the tournament yet. I'm pretty sure that's true. Someone correct me if I've forgotten one in the chat or whatever. But I'm not going to say it's a solved problem, but there's no Iko Para running around in the box being marked anymore by Kasia.
I think that's true, Jamon. There's one thing about Vako, though, and I think there's one thing that could prevent him from having success this game, and that is Osvaldo Alonso and Jan Gregus for Minnesota. They have been absolutely fantastic for Minnesota as 2 central holding midfielders. So I see this game as being largely a battle between those defensive midfielders, between Gregus and Alonso, and then Judson for the Quakes. And I think that Vako is going to have trouble in those spaces because Gregus and Alonso have done so well playing there for the last 2 years. One interesting thing is that one of their breakout performances together as a defensive midfield pair was against the Quakes. The first time they played the Quakes last year in 2019. I was covering the game for the Minneapolis Star Tribune, so I was paying particular attention to the Minneapolis, to the Minnesota side, and that was their breakout game together in that defensive midfield role and that partnership together. So I think that will cause the Quakes problems, and I think Vako could struggle this game. So he'll need to have a strong performance for sure.
For me, I want to say this one last thing. For me, really, this game, what it comes down to is just mentality. Who's going to be the stronger side mentally? Who's going to be more resilient? Who is going to be able to withstand going down and having to pick themselves up by the bootstraps and go after the other team? Or who's going to be able to be able to squeeze out a win if the game happens to be a draw and the game needs to go to penalties, right? And I say that because Minnesota United has not been playing well. You're right, Jamon. Minnesota United has not been playing well this tournament. They were barely able to get by. They obviously got through to the quarterfinals via penalties against Columbus. The Quakes have been one of the better teams without a doubt this tournament. But I think a lot of that has to do with the mentality of the team. Now, I say that because, we've always known, we follow this team, we cover this team, we know that the team has potential, but really what it comes down to, what it has always come down to is as Matthias says it all the time, is the players believing in themselves. And I think now they're very convinced that they can go out there and go toe-to-toe with the majority of the teams in the league, yes, but not only that they can actually correct the minor mistakes that they're making on the field, which is, I think, the biggest deficiency within this team. If the Quakes are able to correct the deficiencies that they have defensively, they can walk out with the title at this point in time. I mean, at this point of the tournament, obviously, if they were to get through, I'm sure LAFC would as well. That would be a really, really tough semifinal draw. But, I think it comes down to mentality. Whoever comes out the strongest mentally, I think, is going to get through. And I think that is really the key. That's going to be the key on Saturday.
Yeah, Joel, I agree with you on that mentality note, and similar to kind of what we had heard from Tommy Thompson in the interview and talking about the mentality coming out of halftime against RSL. Very similar type of thoughts for him. He just seems so focused, and the blinders are certainly on. And Alex Moore.
I mean, it's a short tournament, guys. It's a short tournament. That's what short tournaments are all about. The World Cup, men's World Cup, Copa America. You name it, all these short term, it really just comes down to mentality, and also it comes down to rhythm, and it comes to cohesion and chemistry. But I think none of that really exists without a good positive mentality throughout the team, and that's what the Quakes have had. Obviously, they've had a good dose of that, and I think that Minnesota hasn't been playing exceptional, but they've had a dose of positive mentality as well, and that has been able to keep them in the tournament. Because there were plenty of instances against Columbus where Columbus could have sealed the deal, and Minnesota could have been packing home, as well as a game against the Rapids too, right? And that game against Sporting Kansas City, they were barely able to squeeze out the 3 points. Then, if it wasn't for Tim Melia going out with a red card, I mean, they've been able to stick in there because, they've been fierce. They've had a lot of tenacity. And I think the same goes for the Quakes as well. I mean, they've convinced themselves that, they can go toe-to-toe with the very best, or with whomever is in front of them. I think that's that. Like I said, I think that's going to be a huge factor Saturday night.
Yeah, Chase Gasper was on Extra Time earlier today, and he was chatting about the fact that they label themselves as grinders. That's just what they do. They just want to grind these results out. And what you said, Joel, about kind of the World Cup tournament play is you want to be peaking right around this moment. You want to be peaking. You don't want to just barely kind of get through. And I think that's something that is an extra confidence boost for the Quakes, because, the round of 16 game and the Chicago game gave them a little bit more confidence. And it wasn't just, scraping through by the skin of their teeth kind of thing. And one other thing that Chase Gasper had spoken about was that they look at Vegas odds Minnesota United, which I thought was a really interesting tactic, that their team looks at Vegas odds, when they're up against it. And when it comes to the midfield, the central midfield three for Minnesota, Hassani Dotson, Young Gray Goosh, and Ozzy Alonso, this game's going to be won in central midfield. I think Jackson and Judson will be on the ball a lot. I feel that Judson and Jackson will have to do a lot of work breaking up things defensively when Minnesota's on the counterattack. Minnesota, their last match, 35% possession. So you would expect the Quakes to have a lot of the ball. And then as well, it's going to be on Espinosa, Vaco, and none other than Magnus Eriksson, who had an outstanding game last game with his progressive passing that Jamon talks about, to be those unlocking players. But I think it'll be in central midfield where this battle will really be very important, not having Jackson or Judson getting caught out. And then also having the attacking central midfield player like a Magnus or Vaco Espinosa being able to kind of unlock. And on the Minnesota side, they look good. That midfield three, as you had said, Gregush and Ozzy Alonso, Alex, very good together as well. Obviously, no Iko Para for Minnesota United. And Saturday night, 5 p.m. kickoff. It's going to be a bit of a battle, I think, and certainly, one of these teams that does get through, Quakes, Minnesota United, they still have a big story to tell within Major League Soccer, because I don't think Major League Soccer is always ready for a Minnesota United or a San Jose Earthquakes to get into the final four of a tournament. Big things at stake in this match, I think, for both sides, certainly. Let's go ahead and take some questions. And I had a question here, and the first question was about the center back pairing, and it was actually a comment that I'm going to turn into a question. One of my favorite things to do on the show. And it says, it's from our viewer, Nathan Zaragoza, who writes, "Love Guram, but free my boy Florian. I feel like he was one of the most consistent players and somehow isn't seeing the pitch at all." Alex Morgan on center backs. What is your view on the partnership after those two Kasia errors?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that San Jose center backs were their least convincing players this past weekend against RSL. There were a couple moments of miscommunication and disconnection that cost them pretty dearly. Vega had to make a couple outstanding saves in the second half to protect San Jose's lead. And then for RSL's first goal, obviously Kasia made a huge error. Tried to challenge for the ball, but hopelessly mistimed his header. And that's actually probably his biggest weakness, that sometimes he can dive in too early. He did that a lot at the beginning of last season. But Almeida encourages that aggressiveness. He's willing to take those risks. So I actually think that the tactical error in that situation was made by Alanis. In that situation, when Kasia was man-marking Martinez, Alanis was the one that needed to be providing cover. That's how the Quakes play. One of the center backs is always man-marking, and the other is roaming the defense like a sweeper, cleaning up the long balls over the top. But Alanis was momentarily caught ball watching there. He forgot to shift to cover Kasia until Kasia had already committed the error and Martinez was in behind. So that's what allowed Martinez to get one-on-one so easily. And this isn't the first time that's happened either. Against Chicago, the Quakes had a momentary lapse right after they broke the deadline and almost allowed the goal. This time there was only 21 seconds between RSL kicking off and scoring. So that's a concerning trend. I think the good news is that I think it's a pretty easy fix, that one. Almeida just needs to tell his defenders to play a little more conservatively right after they scored so that they don't lose their lead so quickly. And otherwise, I think that Alanis and Kasia are still San Jose's best bets at center back. And I've made it clear on the show before here. I think that Florian's best role is as a roaming defensive substitution. He can play as a substitution for Jackson Ewell in the midfield coming on late, or if any of the backline players are cramping, he can slot in anywhere on that back line, I think. And I guess my main concern was that he wasn't introduced until really late. And I think I would have liked to have seen him be introduced a little earlier. I think that would have given the Quakes a little more defensive solidity in that last half hour of the game.
By the way, there was a very interesting tactical wrinkle that I'm almost certain no one else picked up on. So I'm going to throw it out there, and if you did, let me know. But when Almeida brought on Flo, he told Flo that he wanted him to do something. I'm like, what is he telling Flo to do? Because it's obvious where Flo is supposed to go. He pushed Alanis up to defensive midfielder, and Flo played left center back.
He was getting excited with his PS3 joystick. Or,
yeah, you were like, yeah, you're going to do here,
gotcha.
And Flo's kind of like,
I
got it, okay. And then I noticed Alanis was in Judson's spot, and I did not expect that. I
Alex,
thought for sure he was coming in for Judson.
Alex, I disagree with you. I personally think that an Alanis Youngberth tandem is the most effective for the San Jose Earthquakes, but I also do believe that it's too late. It's too late to pull the plug on Kasia heading into a quarterfinal game. It's just too late, and it doesn't make sense to reconfigure the starting 11. I would be shocked if Matias Almeida decides to not go with the same 11 that he went with last game, which was the same 11 that he started the tournament with. I think he has his 11 figured out. He obviously likes having a left-footed center back in Osvaldo Alanis, who can offer a little bit more on the offensive side of play, and then settle as a last man with Guram Kasia, who I think at times happens to be a little too ambitious. And given that, he's on the other side of 30, as some people might say, that it does tend to bite the team in the rear as it did last game. So I wholeheartedly believe that Florian is one of the best defenders that the Quakes have. He's definitely one of the better defenders with the ball at his feet. He, like Alanis, can also offer a whole lot in the final third or leading up to the final third. And he's actually really good when it comes to his aerial game. I think he provides a lot more than Guram. He's a fighter. Guram's a fighter as well. But like I said, it's too late. I think this is the 11 that Matias is going to be going with. I would be shocked, really, really shocked, if any changes were made ahead of the game on Saturday.
Yeah, Marcelo Barriga, he wrote, lineup-wise, do you anticipate 1 to 2 changes? If so, who? He's only made 2 changes, and that was in the third group stage game with Paul Marie coming in and Flo starting at center back. So there's only been 2 changes from his sides this entire tournament. So I agree with you, Joel. There will not be any changes unless somebody was injured. And somebody did have a question about Christian Espinosa, but I do not believe that he will be missing out. And I think that the question was from Nathan Zaragoza, any word on Espinosa's injury status? I think he's a go for Saturday, I would assume. Right, guys?
Yeah, I would think so as well. I mean, today he spoke with the press. That usually means the player is going to play. No word on an injury. I think he's 100%.
Yeah, we haven't heard anything otherwise, and if we do, that'll be big news, and we'll let you guys know about it.
Yeah, unless Matias is trying to pull one over on Adrian.
Jamon, you expect to see something, huh?
I don't. I'm just saying, I wouldn't put it past Matias to show a card like that. Let's just say it that way.
Alex, Jamon, we spent about a half an hour talking about Magnus Eriksson last episode. I just have to go over it and see. And Joel, would love to hear your thoughts on this. Eriksson, best game in a Quakes shirt. But the big question here before we wrap up the show is any news on the future? Any news from his future? Anything that you guys have heard from your reporting?
I can add to what has been reported by Daniel Christofferson and other journalists in Sweden, and as well to what Alex Morgan added during the last show. I will quote a message that I got from a source very close to Magnus Eriksson, and it reads, I don't know what will happen in the future, but Djurgården, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is a club who is close to his heart in Sweden. Then maybe no stupid guess. Exactly now, I don't really know. End quote. I personally, from what I understand, and from what I've been able to read and from what I've heard, I think that the Swedish club and Magnus Eriksson are in contact. They're trying to figure something out. I don't know if the San Jose Earthquakes have been looped in yet. I don't know if an offer has been made yet, but the intentions are for Magnus Eriksson to return to his former club as soon as this summer. And what does that mean? What does a time frame look like? I think I would imagine that, in the weeks following the end of the tournament, I can't think at the top of my head when the MLS summer or secondary transfer window opens. That was reconfigured following COVID-19, but it's not too far away. And I think this does this can do a lot of favors for the San Jose Earthquakes. Yes, Magnus Eriksson has been instrumental. He's been a huge piece, undoubtedly, whether fans, like his style of play or whether they don't. He's been a really effective player on the field. The captain of the team has been Matias's captain of choice ever since Wando started taking that bench role. And, the thing is, the other piece is, as I know, is that, Eriksson has about six months left in his contract, right? Okay, August 12th is a secondary window. That's when this August 12th is when players would be able to come in from abroad, and players from MLS would be able to go abroad in transfers. So, look, I think the Quakes should really walk off as winners here, because the player is able to settle a pre-contract now that he's in his last 6 months, and he can eventually, theoretically, he can walk away on a free during the winter with a contract sealed, signed, and delivered. Now, I don't know if the Quakes are going to counter that and propose a new contract to Magnus. Who knows if Magnus would want to take that contract and sign another 2-3 years in San Jose, or if he's really willing to just leave the American dream behind and go back home. But what I can confirm is that the interest is there, and that all two parties, at least the Swedish club and Magnus, are in contact about planning a move back to Sweden.
Yeah, right after the game, Magnus was in the post-game press conference, and he said, "I'm happy here right now," and it wasn't impromptu a question about him leaving, but he made a point to just say, like, I'm happy with this team right now. I think given the secondary window, it at least gives everyone an opportunity to see what happens in this next game, and then make a decision after that, because the window is just going to check the length of the window. It is open until October 29th. So quite frankly, the window's open a pretty long time. No decision has to be made now. This can be put off until after the tournament, and I pretty much expect it will be. I would highly doubt Magnus would leave the team in this type of situation high and dry in the middle of the tournament, particularly the way he's playing right now.
No,
I don't see any.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't foresee any situation in which Magnus leaves the team before the end of this tournament, but I think it is theoretically possible that he signs for Djurgården actually any day now, because I think the Swedish transfer window opened yesterday on July 29th. So it is theoretically possible, I think, that he could sign a contract with them. He wouldn't be able to leave the Quakes until August 12th, I think. But it's possible that he has already signed a deal, or as soon as the tournament ends, will sign a deal with Djurgården. I haven't heard any new news to report on that front, but I expect that after the tournament, this tournament ends, that those negotiations will intensify.
There'd also have to be a situation in which the Quakes would release him, though, right? So the Quakes do own the contract for now. He can sign it, but that doesn't mean he's going to leave in the summer.
No, but then that's when the Swedish club steps in. They pay a transfer fee, and the Quakes recoup a portion of the $1.2 million that they paid for him a couple of years back.
That's the question.
And really, the power is in the hands of the San Jose Earthquakes. In other words, in the hands of Fiorinelli. If he can decide the future of Magnus Eriksson, as soon as in like 2 weeks, in 2 weeks' time. Will they be comfortable with letting Magnus go? Is really the toughest question. Are they able financially and logistically able to replace Magnus Eriksson as soon as the tournament ends? Do they have someone lined up in that position? Those are really the questions to ask at the moment, and I would not expect for the Quakes to really have those answers, given that they're fighting for a CONCACAF Champions League berth.
The power is in the hands of Karn Johal, who asked that question, actually, Joel. And that's going to be a consistent question we'll have to answer here on the show, and appreciate everybody's takes. I've always said it's a win-win either way. The Quakes keep Magnus, fantastic. If they get rid of him, fantastic, because they're going to have to replace him at some point anyway, and there's always lots of discussion on who a number 10 wizard could be in that role. And last week I touched a little bit on that as well. But Nick Kearns, let's quickly go on the matchup again, back to Minnesota, the 5-2 match. Grey Goose was an absolute beast. Think he was involved in each Minnesota goal. In the world of man-to-man, who's going to get that unlucky job? Jamon, I'm going to ask you this question first. Who do you think is going to be tracking him? Do you think it's going to be Magnus?
Yeah, probably not. I'm just gonna guess that they're gonna have to reconfigure everything that they did in the last game with Judson coming on the pitch.
Right.
Yeah, he's an absolute beast, but I also would expect that Matthias is going to really kind of think about where he has different players mark, the type of press that he wants to do, how Minnesota was able to exploit it the last time, and what he's going to change now that he's got Judson on the pitch. To be able to handle those types of different situations. So I think he's going to give it a different look than he did the last time.
I agree. If I had to place money on anybody, it might be Jackson Ewell, just because Magnus is usually pushing higher up towards the center backs. So I think Jackson Ewell might be the unlucky man to have to take that assignment. But as Jamon said, it's not very often that the Quakes come up against teams with such strong, two strong defensive midfielders. So they'll have to reconfigure one way or another.
Ted Firestone had chimed in earlier and has been watching the show. Shout out to Ted Firestone, who actually used to work for the San Jose Earthquakes. He was the season ticket manager for many years during my time, actually, and a friend, and appreciate you tuning in, Ted. Great to hear from you as always. Who has the edge in the shootout? Seems like a probability based on the tournament format with extra time. Lads, is it a Tyler Miller who came up and was able to make a couple of saves and has that confidence? And Minnesota made all 5 of their PKs, all 5. They won 5-3. So, or is it the Quakes with Vega and Magnus Eriksson, Wando, Espinosa, if he's still on the field, Vaco, we talked about it a little bit last week, but who wants it first?
If I have one tip for Vega, don't dive to the right 4 times. That's my one tip.
Okay.
Just, at least change direction and keep them guessing.
I like the first 3 names you mentioned, Charles, Magnus, Wando, and Espinosa. I at least know for sure that Magnus and Wando are 2 of the best PK takers in the league, I think. Maybe because I've seen more of them, but they're really calm, cool, and composed, within that box. And if it does come down to a penalty shootout, I convincingly believe that the Quakes have the upper hand in goal in between the sticks with Daniel Vega. Tyler Miller has had some good games between the sticks this season for sure, but he didn't do too well against Columbus. Aside from that one save, it's really a flip. It's a coin flip. But I like the Quakes' chances in penalties personally.
I have to disagree, Joel. I think that Minnesota United will have the edge, and that's because they performed so well at penalties in the last round, right? I think that gives them confidence, and I'm actually interested whether anybody's proved that statistically, that teams who've won in penalty shootouts earlier in the tournament will go on to be more successful in penalty shootouts later in the tournament. So I think that they'll have the edge just because they have the confidence from that shootout win. But as you say, the Quakes have on paper really strong penalty takers. Alanis, Wando, Shea, all of those are guys that I would trust to take a penalty confidently. And then of course Eriksson, he's 7 for 7, I think was the stat that they said on TV in his time taking penalties for the San Jose Earthquakes. So obviously he should be first up. But I guess the only thing I have to wonder is whether both of his penalties against RSL were the same direction. So I have to wonder whether those 2 penalties will give too much information to Minnesota if it now becomes more of a mind game about which way he'll be going, because they know which way he favors, and he knows that they know which way he favors, and he knows that they know et cetera, et cetera. But honestly, it's a toss-up. I don't really foresee it going to penalties just because Almeida's philosophy is all or nothing. I think either they're going to win it or they're going to go down in flames. But yeah, I think that it would be such an interesting battle if it did happen.
One more comment on the keeper side. I think what people forget is that Daniel Vega saved 3 straight penalties last year.
Yeah,
he's actually been very, very good on penalties, and I think that could give the Quakes a little bit more of the advantage. I do like the penalty takers. My only one question with Christian Espinoza is, can he go 90 plus? He hasn't done it yet in the tournament. I don't think he's going to be there for PKs. I think you're going to see a sub earlier, just like we saw in the last game.
Lucas, I know you're tuning in. We don't usually give predictions on this show unless anybody wants to. I think I'm going to hear crickets for the next 3 seconds unless anybody wants to give a prediction. 3, 2, 1. We don't give predictions on this show, but we appreciate you, Lucas. I know that you tune in each and every week to our program as well, and I appreciate your questions. That is just one tradition that we do not carry on. Although once in a while I've made a prediction, and I'm anyway, you guys know me. All right. There is a question and / comment about the stickers on Matias Almeida's jacket. And it's from Marcelo Barriga. And he writes, on a lighter note, the video where Matias talks about the stickers in Disneyland shows how even in little things, the right mentality is there and starts from the top. And we'll go ahead and play that for you. And we'll wrap our show up this way and quickly take a look at this.
No comment, but we do have a quote.
So we have the quote. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Sorry about that. When we go to take our COVID tests, the staff there, with lots of happiness and energy, ask if you'd like a sticker and stick them on. I honestly do not have a problem with that. I am enjoying my time here a lot. As a kid, it was my dream to go to Disney, and now I'm working at Disney. I honestly cannot believe it. It's a place that has lots of positive energy, good energy. During its normal time, this place sees a lot of people smiling, lots of kids around. I am absorbing all that energy being here, but more than anything, enjoying what I do, which is coaching, training, and take it from that point of view. I am thankful to God for giving me the possibility to do what I love, and a place like this and their league for their organizing this tournament. And there you see the manager, Matias Almeida, who is never short of emotions ever. And I think that that's something that he has in his toolkit that a lot of other international football coaches, because I do consider him a very strong international football name, have in their toolkit that he has above a lot of other coaches and managers in this league. And that's why you see this team become so successful at this tournament and was so successful in the summer last year, and then ran out of gas at the end. But here's a guy that understands and loves and breathes football and wants to showcase his brand of football and get into the players and exactly show them his organization, his system. And it's working for them, and we're seeing the fruits of their labor coming to fruition here. So I think that, with a guy at the helm such as Almeida and hearing Tommy Thompson talk about his leadership throughout this very challenging time, it's not like they're not reflecting on what's going on in the country. I think you can be very satisfied and smile to know that the coach of your football club that you support or you follow is a guy that is humble, passionate, and really wants to do good for his community through his football as well. So I think that's a wonderful thing. Finally, I want to note that this is the full team that you have here tonight. Joel Soria, it's a pleasure to have you back with the team. We are not at 100% strength without you. What do they call that in hockey when you're not on the power play? Shorthanded. We're that. I felt like we're 5-3 or whatever that is. Anyway, I should be doing better with my terminology, but it is fantastic to have you back, pal. and appreciate your insights. And I miss you a lot. And I'm glad that you're with us. Alex Morgan, thank you for helping set up that interview. Jamon Moore, your stats, your charts, and your kid running through the middle of our broadcast shows that we're all human here, and we really are. And I'm going to pull up Jason if he allows me to. Here's our producer, Jason Sholl, if he's going to be around. But I want to just show my gratitude to Jason Sholl, and the rest of the team does. There he is producing the show from his bedroom there, or home office. And Aaron Sholl, his brother, who runs the Fin Factor, which is the San Jose Sharks version of this show, and you should follow the Fin Factor as well. So for everybody that's tuning in, thank you so much for your questions, for your comments. Nathan Zaragoza, you are officially the MVP of the comment section today, so thank you. Keep following us, give us a like, and tell a couple friends as well about us. We need some more subscribers, and we'll see you next time. Quakes, Minnesota United, 5 o'clock kickoff Saturday, and we'll see you for our next show. Cheers.